For many people in long-term care and their families, COVID-19 was a living nightmare. Charnel Anderson covers the Northwestern Ontario Hubs, and she spoke to one woman about what her family went through and what they hope will come out of this election. Charnel Anderson joins us now from Thunder Bay on that. Welcome.
Hi, Dan.
All right, so TVO.org has a series called What's in It for Me, and it's been looking at what's at stake for Ontarians for this election. You spoke to a daughter whose mother stayed in a long-term care home till the end of her life. What's her story?
Yeah, so I spoke to a woman named Maureen and her mom, Elsie. She was actually a Wren with the Women's Royal Naval Service. She had worked on ships during World War II, Elsie, the mom. And in her later years, Elsie developed dementia, and within about a year, it got really bad, and her family was no longer able to manage her care at home. So in December 2018, Elsie entered a long-term care home in Southern Ontario, where sadly she passed away last year. And like many people's experience with the long-term care system, Elsie's was not a positive one. According to her daughter, Maureen, like, for example, when they were doing intake, no one had asked about Elsie's preferences, what she likes, what she doesn't like, the kind of things that make you, you. And so that was kind of a red flag for Maureen. Maureen also told me that the care that her mom received in this long-term care home was a, quote, crapshoot. She said that some of the PSWs were great. Sometimes when she would go visit her mom, she was freshly bathed, someone had curled her hair. And then other times, her mom had soiled herself and she wasn't cleaned up and she had a UTI. And Maureen feels that a lot of the issues came down to the fact that this place was a for-profit long-term care homes. And, so she feels like the profits were priority over even the care for the residents.
As you know, we're less than a week before the election, and I'm curious, what changes does Maureen hope to see in long-term care homes?
So Maureen, like many critics of for-profit long-term care homes, wants to see the profits gone from long-term care. Nobody should be profiting off long-term care, she told me. As well, Maureen would like to see senior care included in the Canada Health Act, and she would like long-term care to abide by national standards. And so there are national standards in the works for long-term care, but it's ultimately up to the provinces whether they adhere to such standards. And then the other thing Maureen wants to see is more investments in dementia care. You may be familiar with the butterfly method of dementia care. It's been covered on the agenda once or twice. There's a long-term care home in Peel that has integrated the butterfly method. And it's been described as, a person-centered approach that focuses on meeting both the physical and emotional needs of residents with dementia. So you know how long-term care homes look like, some long-term care homes look like hospitals, basically. They're just kind of clinical. While butterfly method homes are meant to be more like homes, they're more colorful. There's books and stuffed animals, the kinds of things that you would find in a home. And the staff, instead of wearing regular clothes, they wear regular clothes instead of wearing their scrubs. And, they receive training on how to connect emotionally with residents living with dementia, depending on what stage they're at. So Maureen says that if, we can't get the profits out of long-term care, then she would at least like to see a mandate where some of the profits go back into meaningful care for residents, including programs like the butterfly method.
I think it's important to mention, you talk about for-profit and nonprofit long-term care homes. Obviously, during the pandemic, a lot of eyes were on long-term care homes in Ontario, where over 4,000 people had died. A lot of those in for-profit long-term care homes. But can you sort of help us differentiate the two? What is the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit long-term care home?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that the operation of the way long-term care homes are operated can be defined. Perhaps the most familiar distinction is nonprofit and for-profit, which, is pretty much what it sounds like. So nonprofit long-term care homes spend their revenue on programs and activities in the home, whereas for-profit long-term care homes, they're seeking to make a profit for the owners and the shareholders. And then another distinction is private or public long-term care homes. So long-term care homes can be operated either by, a government, which is typically municipalities, or it can be run by a private entity like a corporation. And so the majority of, just under 60% of long-term care homes in Ontario are privately run for-profit homes. And I should point out that both private and publicly owned long-term care homes receive provincial funding. And so there's different arguments for and against each of these different models, but Maureen's experience with her mom in a privately run for-profit long-term care home, she felt that her mom's care was secondary to this particular long-term care home's goal of generating profit.
All right, let's talk about the four parties and how they are addressing long-term health care in the province. I want to start with the Progressive Conservatives. What is that party bringing forth?
So the Tories say that they're on track to build more than 30,000 net new long-term care beds across the province by 2028. However, they've been criticized for awarding licenses to private long-term care homes that long-term care home operators that operated homes with some of the highest rates of COVID-19 deaths during the pandemic. But if we look at other investments, including the 2022 budget, the PC say they will invest over $1 billion. They will invest $1 billion over 3 years to improve home care. And they've also introduced a temporary tax credit for seniors to make modifications to their homes so they can live in their homes longer. And that tax credit is worth 25% of $10,000 to a maximum of $2,500. As well, the Tories would make their temporary wage enhancement for PSWs permanent through a $2.8 billion investment over the next 3 years. But out of the four major parties, the PCs are the only one who do not promise to end for-profit long-term care.
All right, in the last minute that we have, I do want to get through the three other parties. The other three seem to be taking a different approach. The NDP calling for an end for-profit long-term care homes. Stephen Del Duke and the Liberals are hoping to develop a home care first approach, while the Green Party is, quote, prioritizing care over profit. What are those three parties bringing to the table when we talk about long-term care homes?
Right. So each of these three parties have promised to end for-profit long-term care. That typically looks like, they'll stop giving operating licenses to for-profit long-term care homes. And each of these parties as well, they want to increase the number of beds. There's investments in home care. And each of these parties as well, they want to make sure that residents living in long-term care will get an average of 4 hours of care per day. So, there's lots of investments these parties are looking to make.
Charnel, great pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for bringing these stories to light. Thank you again.
Thanks, Jan.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.